I've done just about everything there is to do in God of War Ragnarok. In my 45 hours playing this game on its second hardest difficulty, I got the Platinum Trophy, completed every mission, I've been to all of the 9 realms and back, and unless there's some super secret boss fight or something that I missed, I think I've just about seen it all. Which I would like to think gives me a more complete perspective on Ragnarok than you're gonna find in too many other places, and with a game so anticipated that anything less than the bona fide game of the year would be a disappointment, that's kind of necessary. So does this game live up to those near impossible expectations? Yeah, probably. Ragnarok ended up being a far better, more emotional game than I expected going in, and I expected it to be pretty emotional. It hits story beats that you absolutely wouldn't expect in a game about Norse mythology. It took a wildly different path than I expected to get to Ragnarok itself, and there's not much I would really change. Also, it has one of the absolute hardest out-of-context images I think I've ever seen in a video game. I'm just gonna put it up here for a sec, so look away if you're afraid of seeing an out-of-context picture. Okay, it's gone. So before I go further, a couple disclaimers. One, outside of that image just now, this video is going to be completely spoiler-free. I'm probably not going to say much more about the plot than I just did, and I'm only showing footage from the first couple hours of the game, the exact same stuff that Sony limited previews to last week. That said, there may or may not be spoilers of the last game, but if you're watching a review for a direct sequel, I would like to think you already know. And 2, my review copy was provided by PlayStation. Now, as always, me getting the game early is not going to affect my critical opinion. You can't buy me off that easily. In fact, like I do with most of my Day 1 reviews, we're going to start by talking about the worst part of this game first. Mechanically, this is very much just more God of War. That's the killer in-depth analysis that brought you to me instead of IGN, so make sure to subscribe for more of that. I'm not sure anybody really expected anything different considering this is still a PS4 game, but yeah, no, this is just Dad of Boy, but better. There are some new weapons and abilities, but you'll start out on the skill tree unlocking some of the very same upgrades that you already had by the end of last game. There's still the same level 1 to 9 armor and weapon system with a bunch of different gear and upgrades that each have unique effects, the kind of stuff that'll really click for the people trying to optimize for the hardest difficulty on repeat playthroughs, but also the same kind of stuff that to most people, frankly, ends up being, pick the bigger number, the rest of it doesn't really matter enough to you. Thankfully, they did do away with that weird, common, rare, legendary loot color coding system that never really fit to me considering that the upgrades weren't randomly generated, so it just kind of felt weird. There are also still more than enough of the slow Kratos climbing bits, which I would really like to stop being a thing in every game at this point. I think we're past it. It doesn't add anything to this game in particular whatsoever. I think once Uncharted stopped, we could probably have stopped the rest of it, and we're still going with the climbing, so that's pretty cool. At its core, this game is not trying to be anything more than a sequel, so there are a bunch of new enemies that change up your battle strats, new abilities, the works, but if you're expecting a reinvention of the wheel, you're gonna be disappointed. Now, that said, maybe it's just that I haven't played Dad of Boy 1 in over 4 years, but this game does find a way to feel much faster paced to me. I played on the same difficulty level in both games, and enemies felt far more aggressive this time around than what I remember. The combat actually feels a bit more fluid as far as facilitating use swapping between the axe, the Chains of Olympus, your shield, and any other weapons that I'm not going to reveal. It feels far more dynamic than the first game that often focused more on that defensive, deliberate wait, dodge, and parry focus for at least the first chunk of that game, until later becoming a little bit more hack and slashy, but not really. I've never been a huge fan of the earlier God of War games before the PS4 one, but to me, Ragnarok feels like a reconciliation of the classic hack and slash Greek saga and the more focused Kratos of the PS4 game, and that is a fascinating combo. Part of this change in focus is because his son Atreus is a good bit older now. I believe they say directly in-game that this takes place 2 winters after the 2018 game, but they don't really try to hide the fact that the kid's actor grew up a bit in the 4 years between filming both games. As you play the game, Atreus will unlock new types of enchanted arrow attacks, which can put enemies into a stunned state, or it can magnify the elemental effects of Kratos' weapons. He's got his own upgrade tree with new attacks and abilities. He's just as much the protagonist here as Kratos essentially, if not more so. So the Atreus here is far more capable than just a kid running around and firing basic arrows when you tell him to. I mean, he can still do that, and there were still a couple fights where I would have liked my allies' decision-making to be a little bit better. Like, this game has a much greater emphasis on ranged enemies picking at you while you're fighting the other ones up close, and it would have been cool if your ranged partner did anything against them without you having to ask first. Now remember, that's the worst part of Ragnarök, that this combat starts you around the same level that you remember from the last game, to the point that if you didn't just replay 2018 to refresh your memory, you're gonna be a bit confused as to which parts are actually new. That's exactly what happened to me, I'll admit, but after the first couple hours, so the stuff I'm not showing you, the game really starts opening up. There's a new amulet, for example, that adds stackable bonus abilities to Kratos depending on which enchantments you choose. These will have a specific stat requirement for you to add them to the amulet, but will come with unique buffs like increasing your rage meter depending on how much max health you have, increasing your damage when you're at high or low health, stronger attacks, or just the ability to enter witch time immediately after pulling off a last-second dodge. It's the kind of stuff that really starts you on the path to leaning into a specific playstyle, which I never really felt in the last game. I do have to go back to the first game to really compare them head to head, but I actually think that Ragnarök is quite a bit easier than 2018, in part because this game doesn't drag its feet in the usual, okay, here are the old abilities you had last game part, before moving into the, hey, here's a bunch of new and improved stuff part. Ragnarök essentially treats its first couple hours as a prologue mechanically, sort of like the first area in Horizon Forbidden West feeling like a bit of an epilogue to Zero Dawn, and easing you back into things before moving you into the actual real game with the new abilities and all the cool stuff. And it's worth noting that although I feel this game is easier, that didn't stop me from realizing at the end of so many fights that I was holding my breath. I needed to let out a deep exhale because it was so engaging, and that's something I just don't recall happening last time around. Admittedly, it might help that I played more of a risk-reward heavy build this time around, since the game felt more aggressive than reactive, and in turn, I let myself get hit very frequently at first, and it sucks because I can't show you the gameplay where I promise I'm actually good at the game, so I apologize for the dumb gameplay you've probably already seen, but yeah. So between the same old climbing, the same but somewhat improved combat, the works of God of War feeling the same here as they did 4 years ago, those of you that maybe didn't care for 2018's game might feel like I'm telling you that this game isn't gonna click here either. The thing is, although it starts off by feeling about the same in a vacuum, it's Ragnarok's context that not only washes over those core similarities, it enhances them and recontextualizes them. Take, for example, the obligatory, okay, you're in a canoe now, go do some side stuff if you want sections of both games. At its core, it's the same thing. Here's a chance to level up, do some basic but enjoyable side content, and then come back around to the main story once you get bored. However, where I did those things in 2018 out of my dumb gamer brain desire to do all the things and hoard all the items, I found myself doing these same things in Ragnarök more because of the constant back and forth dialogue between Kratos, Atreus, and everybody's favorite disembodied head, Mimir. Like, you're probably not going to expect it, but this game is funny. Like, very, very funny. There are points in this game that lampoon pretty much every classic God of War trope. Some of your companions, for example, will start getting annoyed at you while you're searching for loot, to which Atreus usually says, oh yeah, Dad likes treasure. There are several times the game slightly acknowledges how players have perceived Kratos in the past, either by having a character mock his mannerisms, or by playing creatively with how often he used to call his son boy. And Kratos, I can't believe I'm saying this, has actually fully opened up as a character by this point. He's still a gruff man of few words, of course, but he'll occasionally chime in with a great quip that both feels totally in character, but also comes out of left field the first time you hear it. There's even a character you encounter early on that just refers to Kratos as Grumbles. I love it so much. During a side mission, another character calls him Biseptimus, to which Kratos responds without missing a beat, I do not like you. And so many of those side quests I mentioned earlier highlight and magnify the game's core motifs of the rigidity of fate, of coming to terms with the wrongs you've done in the past, or how sometimes you can't just fix things. You might be able to make them marginally better, but you can't always make it right. Some things will always be how they were. There are a lot of side missions in this early part of the game that I'm showing you, for example, that are Kratos choosing to help Mimir make good on all the wrongs that the latter did in the name of staying on Odin's good side. The Kratos of the prior God of War game, let alone the Greek ones, wouldn't have gone on these extra missions just to help out a friend, but after 2 years off-screen of treating Mimir like a friend, like a confidant, and even considering the guy, or head, a brother, he's willing to branch past his old self to help the people he cares about. I was absolutely blown away when the game started paying off things you wouldn't even realize were being set up in the first game, or its willingness to explore Kratos' past in a candid, reflective way. There's a constant run of this game setting up characters or missions only to surprise you by flipping into a different direction right away. It's never a cop-out, it's always understandable or justified in-game. This is simply a game that doesn't want to play with the fate you expected the game to take, and that's literally the theme of the game itself. And in that spirit, there are a number of times that Ragnarok does that sort of thing with even the game's very HUD. To give a couple vague examples, the game plays a few times on the fact that the first game took place in one continuous uncut camera shot, and while a couple of these times do feel a little bit pretentious, most of them had me marveling at the creativity required to get from A to B, to block out all of these scenes in a way that made sense across a 30-hour game. There's another time very early on, like I'm talking the first hour of the game, that the game uses the HUD as a narrative device that is so good that I actually said holy shit out loud, and there are a good few other times that I can't quite explain without going into the story that I just adore. This is probably as good a time as any to talk about performance. Now keep in mind I'm playing the PS5 version of Ragnarok. I had only one crash during the entire game, funnily enough, during the actual credits at the end, and those sorts of crashes I would be certain are already part of the day one patch, so this game was already remarkably stable for an early build. There are only two notable moments where this game hiccuped for me pretty much whatsoever, one being a specific enemy who has one electrically charged attack where the particle effects seem to run at 30 FPS even though I'm playing at 60, that was a little bit weird, and there's another section that involves changing the day-night cycle back and forth in one of the realms that, well, frankly, it definitely hitches up if you start moving while the lighting and everything is changing from day to night or vice versa. I'm going to assume that that part is much more noticeable on PS4. It's to the point that even on PS5, I'm surprised they didn't just make you stand still until the transition's complete, but then again, that might be another thing that's optimized more in the day one patch, I'm not sure yet. Neither of these affected gameplay, for the record. The 30 FPS thing was just a weird... It threw me off, it just made me look at it funny. Otherwise, the game looks gorgeous and runs without any issues, as you would probably expect. I don't think it's quite on the level of Horizon in terms of PS4 and also PS5 games that look super fucking pretty on PS5. That game was a good enough looker on PS5 that you wouldn't even guess it could run on a PlayStation 4, whereas this game, you can definitely see it running at 30 and looking a good bit worse on old hardware, but still being able to run. Don't forget, by the way, that the PS4 version comes with a free PS5 upgrade, so if you buy the PS5 version at $70, you're actively wasting $10. Just a friendly reminder. But anyway, going back to the pace, Ragnarok uses every part of this medium as a narrative device at some point or another, and that it does so without ever really harming the pace is all the more impressive. Moreover, this might just be the most deliberately timed game I think I've ever seen. Like, first off, it starts with one of my favorite opening hours in recent memory. Seriously, that first jump has just about everything in one neat package, from multiple gut punch moments that remind you that, yeah, this game's gonna be sad as hell, to some fast-paced set pieces, to a brief quiet moment here or there that makes you wonder what the relationship between Kratos and Atreus is going to look like as time goes on, to a stellar boss fight. The opening's magnificent pace in this first hour is just an omen of what the entire game has in store. With one major exception, almost every single main mission or section of Ragnarok, almost every single side area, they all last nearly exactly 1 hour. In that hour, you'll get some satisfying story beats, some damn fun combat encounters that rarely feel all that samey or retready, some creative exploration or really damn neat puzzles, and a boss, mini-boss, or set piece that caps off that area with a bang before moving you along. There have been a good number of games in recent years that have started to spend too much time pulling you away from the game to tell you story, often with one of those things coming at the cost of another. Shorter games haven't had that issue as much yet, it's more the games that have started to bloat out more and more and more to fit what we're starting to expect from a AAA experience, and Ragnarok is one of the first, if not the first, long-ass game that I've seen navigate that tightrope pacing-wise, with only one section in my mind where I actively broke my mental flow and thought, I would like a little more combat right now, and one other one where I thought, okay, that's like 4 or 5 encounters in a row with the same type of enemy, let's move it along a little bit. A total of 15 minutes out of 35 hours of main story. Remarkable. Obviously, some actual full areas of the game last through a couple of these sort of chapters, but there's a logical breakpoint at almost every hour marker in Ragnarök, and that even accounts for deaths and getting stuck on a puzzle here or there. When I was recording my gameplay of the main story, all 35 hours and 900 gigs of it, dear God, nearly every file landed in the 45 to 65 minute range, counting me pausing to take notes and every other thing that I have to do when I'm recording footage. I think only one lasted past 80 minutes because I was stubbornly trying to finish up some treasure chest puzzles or whatever, and I didn't want to stop recording even though that would save me a lot of space on my hard drive. I'm stubborn. I usually wouldn't call something like this out, but you could set your watch to God of War Ragnarok's pace and guarantee that every hour had a good amount of high and low points that kept you moving along, that kept you invested, and perhaps most importantly, for those of you on busier schedules or that, say, have kids, it's the kind of game that you know that you can actually fit into that schedule. I don't think this was something that Santa Monica Studios simply fell backwards into, and I have to applaud them for somehow blocking this game out so well that it's longer than many contemporaries and yet doesn't drag more than maybe once, and that one part is supposed to drag, so I've been on the record before as not really enjoying the earlier God of War games because I didn't like Kratos as a character, and I could easily find a good hack-and-slash game with incredible set-piece moments elsewhere in games that did have characters that I didn't hate. And I've expressed in the past that the PS4 game was so compelling to me in part because it did what I thought was impossible by making Kratos a likable character, or compared to some of the later games in the Greek saga, an actual character at all. Ragnarök did the even more impossible by making me want to go back to play the earlier games again, to give them a shot with a new perspective. No characters in this game tiptoe around Kratos being a foreign god this time around. Many of them recognize him immediately as the god killer, because what a shock, you can't just kill an entire realm and sneak away quietly. They'll ask him about the rumors and myths that they'd heard themselves. Kratos even acknowledges his past time and again in specific detail. Over the course of God of War PS4, you saw Kratos move from being a grieving, bitter father in name only, into somebody who could actually act as a caring father. Over the course of Ragnarök, you see him start as that caring father, still quiet and Kratos-y of course, and act more on what he feels is right rather than what he feels is safe. You begin to understand retroactively that he wasn't struggling to open up to Atreus in the past game. He was afraid of raising him into being another Kratos, the one thing that he tried to leave behind, but the one thing he always found himself coming back to. The entire premise of this game is Kratos telling Atreus that he trusts him and that the kid is taking the lead on this journey. We're honestly playing as the protagonist's bodyguard this time around, and it's executed so masterfully that you'll end up getting distracted by side content that feels just as fulfilling, just as thought out, just as necessary to the experience as the main content. That is a really difficult feat to pull off. It took me about 35 or maybe closer to 36 hours to beat Ragnarök, and that includes several stretches where I went completely off the main trail, completing quests in one of the realms purely because it meant helping a friend and hearing them open up more of themselves, or because it felt like the right thing to do that Kratos would do. There were only one or two times where I would stop myself when doing one of these side sections that I thought, maybe I don't actually want to do this just yet. I want to see more story. But those were exceedingly rare. It was to the point that all of the different treasure chests had to stop giving me new armor or weapon upgrades because I'd gotten them all already, like 3/4 of the way through the game. After finishing the game, it took another 10 hours or so for me to go back and finish up some of the post-game stuff, your usual super bosses and the like, cleaning up collectibles, all that fun completionist stuff. Now, there are three things to keep in mind, since I know that some people like to value a game based on just how long it is rather than how good it is for the time it lasts. One, I am always an anomaly in that I finish and complete games far faster than the average, even if I'm playing on harder difficulties or going out of my way to slow down and spend time exploring. I just kind of beat games pretty fast. With that in mind, I would add a good few hours to that number if I were you, probably round up to an even 40 as far as beating the game outright. Two, those numbers are directly from the in-game timer, which I noticed actually doesn't increase all the time. Sometimes if I walked around for a bit and then saved, the timer wouldn't have moved, so I'm not sure if it just retroactively adds that time to the visible timer later, or if it determines on the back end if what you're doing actually counts as gameplay worth adding to the timer, which would be kinda weird. And 3, that last 10 hours of completing the game also had multiple hours of me roaming around aimlessly trying to find one last goddamn bird to kill in an area, since obviously there was no way for me to consult any help when I couldn't find one of the most deviously hidden doors in the entire series. That was pretty fun. So depending on how you play God of War and how much of the side content you do before beating the game, the cleanup part for those of you that are completionists may, and probably should, take far less time than 10 hours when the guides start going up online. So that's sort of the meat of it. There are a couple story beats that maybe get a bit rushed along at one point here or there, or that feel a bit too neatly handled compared to other parts of the game. I can't really talk about those in detail, obviously, but those don't stop the game from being something truly special. I expected a great game. I didn't go in expecting that this had to be the game of the year like so many folks have just been sort of assuming. I mean, Elden Ring's right there, and that's some pretty stiff competition. And yet Ragnarok found a way to twist what I expected of the story, to pretty much immediately go in a different direction than any God of War player would anticipate. Ragnarok starts out as more God of War, and rapidly develops into a game that bridges the classic and modern God of War gameplay styles together. It's a remarkably paced game that fills the quiet moments with genuine reflection and conversation between the cast, that tells an emotionally charged plot that is going to get you misty at multiple points if you have any sort of soul, and it knows better than to just be a bummer for 40+ hours by throwing in some perfectly timed levity to break up the tension without feeling remotely out of place in this universe. Ragnarok makes sure to show, not tell, at least usually. It gives you a bit of silent time to really contemplate, and then right as you're feeling ready to move on from that contemplation, the characters start talking again at just the perfect moment. I usually don't go back to games that quickly anymore after I beat them, just because I don't really have the time anymore, but the entire package of Ragnarok hit different, to the point that I can see myself coming back to do a hardest difficulty New Game Plus run once the inevitable New Game Plus patch drops in a few months. That is how good I think this game is, that I would be willing to put another 40+ hours to play it in full again soon, and die a lot more while doing so. And the thing is, there is so much more that I'm really itching to say, because holy shit folks, this game is something special, and I never thought that I would say that about God of War of all games, but I'm gonna bite my tongue for now because I don't want to say anything else. With how well it pulls together so many different balancing acts without any significant trips, Ragnarok isn't quite going to be the game that you're expecting, and that's part of what makes it a must play. That's part of why it's going to win many, many Game of the Year awards. I can guarantee that right now. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new here and this video helped even a little, make sure to subscribe or else YouTube hits me. I make a bunch of dumb videos talking about different games and what I think makes them cool, so yeah. If that sounds even better or right up your alley, you can even give me money to see those videos early and help decide what videos I work on in the future, or don't. I'm not your dad yet. I have to throw that out there, because that's how this game works. As always, until next time, stay golden.